Hi, mystery writers. It's chilly days and chilly nights here. I hope you're all staying warm and safe. And today I want to talk about a very essential element of your story, which is easy to add but often overlooked. And if you overlook it, your reader gets lost. And it's about telling time in your stories. Readers need to know where they are in the story timeline. The same way you ground them in the setting, you want to let them know where they are. Is it day or night, morning, afternoon? As a writer, you set the timeline for the reader. Time is actually part of the setting, and you need to let readers know what time it is in your scene. In the same way you ground your reader with setting details like the room in a house or a desert valley, you need to help them understand the flow of time in your story. If there's a scene jump, did an hour pass, a day, a month, and how do readers know? So one of the things that can help you with this is to create a story calendar. To reference time markers for your readers, you need to know the time in your story. And you can do this by creating a timeline or a calendar for your story. You can use paper, you can create a digital file, you can use software like Aeon Timeline or Plotter. So you order your story events in sequence. You need to know the story events and when they happen, and include all the story events from the first page to the last. And some writers add backstory events from something as simple as a birth date of a character to major life events that occurred in the past. That's up to you. But definitely within the story, you need your timeline so you and your readers will know when a past event happened. For instance, your protagonist's parent died 10 years ago. Add which characters are present at each story event. You will know, and your reader will know, who had access to an event. This notation is especially helpful for mystery writers. Who was there at the event and who knows it only by hearsay. For each story event, include the time of day and the weather details. So for mystery writers, you can. When did the murder actually happen? And was it sunny or rainy, cold, hot? These details will ground you as you are writing and help readers understand the passage of time in your story. Having a timeline will keep you from overlapping events. As your character travels, you don't want to have them having unrealistic time limits, whether they're traveling by horse to Rome or from San Francisco to Paris. Your story calendar will help you insert time markers into a story with realistic time progressions. So, how do you do all this? I've been rereading, I think for the fifth or sixth time, Adrian McKenty's The Cold, Cold Ground. And one of the ways he does this is an amazing series of events happen each day. And then the chapter ends with how he falls asleep, where he falls asleep. And then the next chapter starts with the next morning or the next event, which sometimes happens in the middle of the night. All right, so you can tell a time with a clock, and that's the obvious way to anchor your reader with time, is to announce the day and time. Some stories, especially in crime fiction, use the date and time as chapter headings or subheadings. Robert Harris starts each chapter of Pompeii with the date and the Roman hour, 22 August, 2 days before the eruption. Um, so that is a very obvious way that you can do that. So in the narrative, a character can glance at a clock or a watch, and this action builds tension when the character is working against a deadline. This technique works in detective and thriller stories when the protagonist feels the pressure of the clock ticking. But establishing time works best with a subtle use of time markers that hint at the time without guiding the reader to look at a clock. All right. So, how do you tell time without a clock in your story? Your story needs those time markers so the reader understands the passage of time. And without specific time indications, readers become confused, stop reading, and turn back in your story to try to establish the time of the current scene. You don't want them to do that. You never want your reader to stop and go back and go, what time was it? When did this happen? As a writer, you can get caught up in the action and dialogue and forget to add the time markers. And a practical way to help readers is to start each scene with some kind of time reference. Then, in the middle of the scene, add a second time marker. So, how do you do this? You can use events. You can reference to story events, both past and future, to remind readers of the passage of time. Is the train, ship, plane leaving in hours or days? And how long is that from where we are now in the story? And how close is your sleuth to that deadline? So if you mention an upcoming event that will happen in a week, for instance, readers will know a week has passed since the earlier scene when the event happens in the story. Just remember, your readers are smart. They'll get that, all right? Another way, there's events, and another way is transitions. Transitions from one scene to the next can be short or long. For example, exactly 28 hours after Mike received the telegram, or the next morning, or that night, are all examples of short transitions that help your reader understand time passing. If there's a long break in time between scenes, a longer passage helps move your story through time. So now there's a long break between the last scene and the scene then the current scene. So you can add that time passage. For example, for the next month, Axel discovered nothing. He filled out papers, caught up on reports, hated what he thought was time-wasting activities. No one called. He'd followed all the leads. So you fill in that time gap with what happened with your character during that time gap. Another one, broad stroke, is seasons of the year. Um, you ground your reader in time and also provide setting details all at the same time. Seasonal details like rain and snow, heat, blooming trees, falling leaves help your reader see and feel your character's surroundings. And also, don't forget, sports are seasonal and are a good reference for the season. Andy switched from track to cross-country skiing as the days shortened. Any way to reference that time passing. And of course, their daily activities. Daily activities are subtle time markers. When a character acts in a natural daily activities, readers instantly know the time of day. So, eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner, heading to school or work, an evening cocktail, children playing after school, returning from school or work, getting ready for bed. All these little daily activities just hint to the reader that what time of day it is. And amazingly enough, distance is another way to hint at time in your story. Your characters need to go from one place to another, and when characters and readers know how far away a destination is, they know how long the journey will take. But readers need to know how your character travels. Are they going by foot, by car, by truck, by plane, by train, by rail, by horseback, by mule cart? You need to know because their passage from one place to another is going to be shorter or longer. You can also indicate your character's response to travel. Are they tired, cranky, or invigorated at the journey's end? Michael Connelly keeps his characters moving in heavy Los Angeles traffic and by car or plane to outlying suburbs and Las Vegas. Um, and so you get a sense of the day going by how that character, Harry Bosch, travels in Los Angeles. You do need to include time, you need to have it accurate, and it needs to be consistent. So, just as you ground characters in the physical setting, include time references in each scene. You'll help your reader understand the time sequence, and they'll be clear about how scenes relate to each other in time progression. So, keep your time references accurate as they relate to other events in your story, and make sure your characters move in a realistic time frame. You don't want your reader wondering how your hero got from point A to point B in an unrealistic time frame. So show your reader how your character has delayed or how the flight went smoothly. Use time markers consistently to keep your reader in the story and include at least one in every scene, the same way you include setting details. If you skip time markers for several scenes or chapters, your reader may get lost and do the same thing, that thing you don't want them to do. They'll stop reading. So, from clock to seasonal references, time markers ground your reader and keep them in the story. All right, I hope that helps. Um, it's it's little, it's tiny. Your time markers are very small in your story, but they're absolutely essential to keep your reader from guessing. You don't want them guessing, you want them following the story. So just pay attention to your time markers. It's something you can do in the editing phase to just double check that you have a time marker in each scene. All right, I hope that helped, and I'll see you next week.